Evolution fascinates me, and many of you. The light it shines on nature only magnifies its marvels, and its insights help us unravel some puzzling curiosities, like why islands often develop their own special creatures found nowhere else, or how the ice fish of the Antarctic, alone among vertebrates, shut down its entire production line of red blood cells. Look on the right of its blood, like ice water. Wild. But it's not just evolution as science that captivates us. Evolution as a cultural phenomenon, equally intriguing. And on this field, religion, particularly in the West, the Christian religion, has been a major player. But Darwin figured out how all living things are connected in one tree of life, sketched here from one of his early notebooks. Well, what else do you notice? Check out that scribble. Where did that come from? Medical school. 18 months of medical school. It took its toll. You know that after 4 years, if your handwriting's still legible, they won't let you graduate. Now this tree of life metaphor, that was just brilliant. Life, like a tree, is rooted in the earth. It emerges gradually from a common trunk, akin to our common ancestry. The varieties in the species diverge through natural selection, much like separating branches. And that expansive crown, ooh, that's the breadth of life's spectacular diversity. Now, prior to Darwin, most people simply followed their creationist intuitions. They thought that each type of plant and animal had initially appeared on the earth, suddenly, fully formed, out of the blue. A friend of mine refers to this as supernatural poofing. Poof! But the publication of The Origin of Species in 1859 challenged this prevailing top-down model with a scientific bottom-up explanation that was natural through and through. Now, some assume the response to evolution from Darwin's religious contemporaries was uniformly negative, but actually things were much more interesting. Now, in second grade, my nephew abandoned his dreams of becoming a professional football player when he grew up. Now this caught his mother's attention. So what do you want to be? She asked. A doctor. Oh, honey, you'd be an excellent doctor. Like your Uncle David, you care for patients when they get sick. No, Mom, not that kind of doctor. I want to be a real doctor. One who actually helps people. You know, like Dr. Phil. Big impact I had. Whatever he may have thought about physicians, I don't know. But he did recognize that doctors are not all alike. We come in many varieties. And the same was true for religious responses to evolution. They varied greatly, and still do. We'll look at just two. So some were combatants who opposed evolution. For them, this is a black and white either-or issue, no compromise. But others were combiners who took a both-and integrative approach. For them, evolution was God's tool of creation. Think of this as creation not versus evolution, but via evolution, through evolutionary means. They could be considered evolutionary creationists. Now, the first evolutionary creationist in the United States was Asa Gray. Dr. Gray had completed medical school. So what does that tell you? Look at his penmanship. Ruined. But it helped him graduate. Now, his passion for plants caused a career switch from medicine to botanical studies, which turned out to be a very good thing. He served as professor of natural history at Harvard University for over 30 years and became one of the world's leading botanists of the 19th century. An Orthodox Protestant Christian, who was a respected church leader with a strong and active faith. And his understanding of the natural world was transformed by Darwin's watershed book, which he found both thrilling and compelling. Listen to his own words. It is crammed full of most interesting matter, thoroughly digested and well expressed, close, cogent, and taken as a system, it makes out a better case than I had imagined possible. He was impressed. But notice the year, 1860. Imagine his response to today's insights. He would be awed by Sean Carroll's wonderful Making of the Fittest, DNA and the ultimate forensic record of evolution. Or Richard Dawkins' masterful Greatest Show on Earth. It's Gray understood it. Science was about discovering the laws of nature that God had embedded within his creation. And from that point of view, evolution and faith happily marry. As he wrote, I should feel uneasy if I could not connect them into a consistent whole. Now, Asa Gray and Charles Darwin developed a close friendship over the years, over decades, and exchanged hundreds of letters. And with Asa Gray in mind, Charles Darwin wrote, it seems to me absurd to doubt that a man may be an ardent theist and an evolutionist. That's the quintessential combiner. A theist, a believer in God, and an evolutionist. Theistic, evolution. Now, many Christians, many churches, entire denominations have followed suit by following in the footsteps of Asa Gray, by integrating evolution into their conception of creation. Here are some leading examples. Now, this embrace of theistic evolution has been widespread throughout the Christian church, including contemporary evangelicals, who are increasingly adopting an integrative approach. The flagship organizations here are Christians in Science and Biologos, who speaks for them both when they say that they are committed to exploring and celebrating the compatibility of evolutionary creation and biblical faith. Now, not all the faithful are so warm to evolution. Some groups continue to oppose it. Now, why is that? Why are good, intelligent people so entrenched against evolutionary science? Well, at root, it's often a matter of sacred beliefs and tribal bonds. In my latter college years, I became an evangelical anti-evolutionist. Now, I guess my choice of schools was partly to blame. I mean, after all, I went to a small conservative college in a quiet rural part of the country. I don't know, you may have heard of it, UC Berkeley. So maybe it wasn't that quiet. If you look carefully, you can see me there to the left. Oh, well, that won't be helpful. I mean, at Berkeley, what isn't to the left? So how did a pre-med undergrad turn against evolutionary science? Were my professors teaching me right? Oh, they were teaching great, and I was getting the grades. But educational facts alone are no match. Educational facts alone are no match for the deeper forces of our moral and social psychology. The pull of social identity and tribal loyalty can be powerful, which explains why belonging often shapes believing. Not just in religion. We see this in politics too, you know? And so, without much deliberation, the group's views became my own views. And then like a fiery mama bear defending her cubs, we came out fighting when our sacred views were under threat. And that's precisely how we perceived evolution. One big threat. Because we were convinced that it would usurp God's role in creation, undermine our scriptures, and compromise human dignity. So this, for us, this battle was a holy war. And ours was a classic tribal mentality. It was us versus them, and right versus wrong, and good versus evil. Now, I eventually moved on to a different church community. It was more open to integrating science and faith. And that move allowed me to lay down my arms and walk away from the battle. But those years, those polarized years, taught me how vulnerable, how susceptible we are to tribal division. And titles like these have helped me understand how this works. The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, by Jonathan Haidt. And Joshua Green's Moral Tribes, Emotion, Reason, and the Gap Between Us and Them. Now, the banner around which many religious combatants rally today is called Intelligent Design. It claims that there are gaps in the evolutionary model. Gaps, interestingly, that are eternally unsolvable. Some things are just too complex to come about by natural means. The human eye, the clotting cascade, bacterial flagella, they must have been designed and manufactured exclusively in the heavens, and then miraculously inserted, fully formed into the natural world. ID, the initials for intelligent design, could just as well stand for inexplicable deficits. Now, the science cartoonist, Sidney Harris, captures this beautifully. The younger scientist with the glasses had just encountered a deficit, something a little too complex for him to understand. So he just chalked it up to a miracle and went on with his formula. Now, if you were an ID gap theorist, he could claim that a natural explanation is not forthcoming and never would be, because the gap provided surefire proof of supernatural intervention, evidence of an intelligent designer. Now, his colleague, probably his advisor, he isn't buying it. He just doesn't buy it. For him, this whole miracle card, that's quite a science stopper. So he says, you know, I think you should be a little more explicit here in step 2. Exactly. That's precisely how science advances. Today's breakthroughs were often yesterday's mysteries, like island creatures or ice fish blood. Puzzling curiosities just awaiting a natural explanation. So we've seen how some supernaturalists engage with science, evolutionary science, some combiners, some combatants, but we could flip this around and look in the other direction. What about scientists and the supernatural? I mean, we're immersed in the study of the natural world, and most of us just accept evolution. What do we think about supernatural things? Well, there's no mistaking that some scientists are combatants. They are convinced that all religion categorically is bad religion. And the only solution for bad religion is no religion. Now, given their, and so in their hands, evolution is not just a window on the wonders of the world, it can be a weapon. But wield the sword of evolution against the defenders of sacred beliefs, and you just anger Mama Bear and justify why she finds evolution such a dangerous threat. Now, given the public popularity of some scientific combatants, we could be excused for thinking that they speak for the scientific community at large. But do they? And we've already met a couple counterexamples, combiners like Asa Gray and Christians in Science. But are they just the exceptions? I mean, how prevalent is faith and anti-faith among scientists? Elaine Howard Eklund is the Autry Professor of Sociology at Rice University and author of Science versus Religion, What Scientists Really Think. In a large study of randomly selected scientists from 21 elite U.S. research universities, she found that about one-third believed in God or a higher power. And that number kicks up to 50% when more general scientists are surveyed. Pew Research Data, 2009. So combiners are common in the academy. And how does the number of combiners compare with combatants, scientists antagonistic against religion? Eklund found only 5% of her cohort fell into this category. Not representative of the whole. But the majority of American scientists, half or more, are neither. Neither supernaturally minded combiners nor antagonistic anti-religious combatants. The combiners, the neithers, would agree with the National Academy of Sciences and the Institute of Medicine when they say that attempts to pit science and religion against each other creates controversy where none needs to exist. So these non-combatant secular scientists are delighted to join forces with science-loving supernaturalists, coming together for shared goals. Saving life on planet Earth is one of their most critical shared endeavors. As E.O. Wilson here describes, one group's conservationism is another's creation care, biblical mandate for responsible stewardship. Protecting the teaching of education in our public school classrooms is also important in both groups. And the National Center for Science Education admirably leads these efforts. So we've spoken of combining as a matter of faith, but evolution and religion can also be integrated scientifically. So the first starts with religion and then draws in evolution into its orbit. But the second flips it around, begins with an evolutionary framework and brings in religion for investigation. And this line of inquiry is particularly exciting. Studies in the cognitive science of religion suggest that we have evolved a constellation of cognitive capacities that develop in childhood and incline the mind to believe in the supernatural. Wow. Now, how these evolved dispositions express themselves depends on the community in which we do our social learning. And studies in the cultural evolution of religion provide the other half of this fascinating story. Even the recent phenomena of secularization comes into focus when seen in this light. And scholars from multiple disciplines are contributing to this burgeoning investigation. And their titles are telling. Why Religion is Natural and Science is Not, Robert McCauley. Born Believers, The Science of Children's Religious Belief, by Justin Barrett. Ira Norenzayan's Big Dogs, How Religion Transformed Cooperation and Conflict. And Paul Bloom's new Just Babies, The Origins of Good and Evil. And that's not just babies, that's just babies. I think you get it. So Darwin's brilliant tree of life, really turned our conception of the natural world upside down by setting it right side up. But the theory of evolution didn't enter the world in a vacuum. Ever since its inception, it's been caught up in the cultural currents of our times and pulled in several quite different directions. Combatants pit evolution against religion. And here, evolution can be a threat to sacred beliefs or a weapon to attack religion. Combiners, as we've seen, take a both-and approach. Here, evolution can be a tool, God's tool, for creation, or even a lens, an illuminating lens on religion and through religion on humanity herself. So this outline, admittedly rough and incomplete. Nevertheless, it helps us interpret the world around us. Oh, at a political level, absolutely, but also interpersonally. Our classmates and co-workers, our friends and family, have taken positions on this map different than our own. Understanding why can help us build bridges, even across battle lines. There's much we can learn from this dynamic interface of evolution and religion, and you are welcome to come explore. Thank you.